So you've decided to be a dungeon master. You are now the storyteller, referee, world builder, and emotional support human for a group of chaos gremlins with dice. But just like new players, new DMs make mistakes. Totally normal, completely fixable. Today we're going to talk about the most common mistakes new DM makes and how to avoid them so your game stays fun, not stressful. So mistake number 1. Thinking you need to know all the rules. New DMs often think I can't start until I've memorized the entire rulebook. That's a lie. Even experienced DMs look things up mid-session. Rules will be forgotten. Spells will be misunderstood, and that's fine. Other players might know rules that you don't have memorized, and they can pipe up. Now, they have to avoid being like rules lawyers, but I do think it's useful to have somebody else at the table that understands the game as well as you do that can help fill in those gaps. So a better approach here is you can learn the basics. You should know what the different actions do. Like you should know what disengage and the attack action and the hide action and stuff like that do. Make a quick ruling when unsure. So if you're not completely sure, you can just make it up in the moment. The DMG even says that the rules should just be a guideline. And then another option is to look it up after the session. I mean, if you're not sure how a rule works, you can tell your players, hey, we're going to do it this way for this session, but then I'm going to figure out how it's supposed to be done. Now, the best way I like to do this is I do use a DM screen. So my DM screen tells me things about different ability checks people can make. It tells me different actions people can take, different bonus actions, stuff like that. I think a DM screen is really useful. You can also put like note cards on the DM screen to remind you to look at like, to see if people have like concentration spells and everything. I think that's something that DMs often forget about, players often forget about. So it can be nice to have that little reminder on there. If you don't want to use a physical DM screen, because I know a lot of people think it separates you from the rest of the table and they want to feel like they're part of the game more. They want the players to feel like the DM's part of the game and isn't like an outside force. You could put a digital DM screen onto a laptop. I've done that in the past as well. I use a like spreadsheet thing where one of the tabs is a digital DM screen with information that I've pulled off the internet. And I think that works just as well. And like I said, you can add things in there to remind you about things like concentration spells. But the main point here is your players would rather keep the game moving than wait 10 minutes while you search through the DMG. I do think this is a lot easier now because there's Google searches that you can just find the ruling a lot faster. It used to be you have to flip through the book. So mistake number 2, over prepping everything. New DMs love prep. Maps, lore, backstories for NPCs the party might never meet. And then players say, we ignore the quest and go to the tavern. 3 hours of prep gone. I am kind of very guilty about this. I over prep everything. I created a new campaign world, created a new pantheon, and then barely played in that setting. I mean, I might get to play in that setting soon, but that's besides the point. Over prepping can be a problem. If you just like to prep, I mean, I don't think it's a big problem, just don't over prep. I would say you should prep for situations, not outcomes. So you should know who wants what might happen if the players do nothing, a few locations and like names of NPCs. The rest you can improv it. Your players will never know what was planned versus what wasn't planned unless you tell them. I am kind of guilty of this as a player where I just mess up the quest. So I played a character that was like a halfling that really liked tweets. So there was an entire quest where I decided instead of doing what we were supposed to be doing, he was going to go to a bakery and buy a cake and eat it in front of the bakery. So, I mean, I'm part of the problem, but your players are going to be unpredictable. Instead of over prepping, you should just prep for a couple of situations and then hopefully just improv the rest. Mistake number 3, railroading your players. This kind of goes into the last one a little bit. Railroading happens when the DM forces you down one path. No matter what the players do, they will end up here. If every choice leads to the same result, players stop making choices. Now, I think there's a healthy amount of railroading to do. If your players are exploring an area and they need to get a certain quest point and they go in a different direction, you can like move an NPC. But the main thing here is the players need to have agency. If they can't change the story with an action, then that becomes a problem. You can prep situations, like I said in the last bullet point. Just don't prep that they have to happen at this time. It has to happen this way. I've had NPCs that were supposed to play a big part in the campaign that died very quickly. It's going to happen. The best mindset to have here is that you control the worlds, the player controls the character. Let them surprise you. Some of the best D&D moments happen when your plans completely fall apart. Some of the best, most memorable moments for me as a player is when the DM let me do something ridiculous that I know ruined the quest, like going to a bakery and buying a cake. Or I had one character that smacked his chest plate when he was in the dark, and the DM let him echolocate where the exit was. So, I mean, just let your characters do fun things and try not to railroad them. Mistake number 4, and I think maybe one of the most common mistakes for a new DM, is being afraid to say no. Everybody is always taught through like TV shows and stuff that the number one thing in improv is yes and. I've heard it a lot. I've heard it from people that do improv, like the people over at Dropout have talked about like the yes and thing. But there is a different thing called no but. Some new DMs never say no. Players ask for wild things. Can I seduce a dragon? Can I one-shot the boss? Can I use this spell in a way it absolutely doesn't work? It is okay to say no. Saying yes to everything can break the game. A good DM rule is to say no when needed, but try to say no, but this is what you can do. So, can I use this spell in a way it doesn't work? No, but you can use this spell to do something else. I mean, you should have some flexibility, but it is definitely okay to say no to somebody. Boundaries can help keep the game fun for everyone. You're also supposed to be enjoying this game. And then mistake number 5 is making combat too hard or too easy. Balancing combat is really tricky. New DMs often throw in monsters that are way above the party's level or make fights so easy there's zero tension. And then suddenly there's a TPK or boredom. So some advice here is to start small, use fewer enemies, and adjust on the fly. So you can always add reinforcements or reduce the monster's HP if things go sideways. Your players don't see your notes, and you can use that power responsibly. I will say, this is just a tough one to do anyways because 5e is not the best at balancing combat in the first place. I have accidentally done this too many times. There is a monster out on the internet. I think it's maybe through Reddit. Somebody created it called the Bloody Berry. It looks like a tomato, and it's this berry that can teleport and do like psychic damage and everything. And I threw it at the party. That was an appropriate level. And this berry almost killed the entire party. So you have to be careful pulling homebrewed monsters as well. I think the main thing for me here is if you think the fight might be boring, try to throw in some flavor too. I had a small fight in a tavern with an enemy and I had like the environment be destructive. The character threw a bomb and it destroyed a wall. It destroyed some tables, threw some like patrons around. I think you can do this in a fun way and just spice up the combat a little bit if you think that the combat might be too boring, or if you just want to try something new. And then the last mistake I wanted to talk about, mistake number 6, is taking player choices personally. Players will miss cues, ignore plot points, joke during serious moments, and do something you didn't expect, like I said earlier. This isn't an attack on you. They're engaging with the world in their own way. If you have an issue where a player seems to be disrespecting you, that's definitely a conversation you should be having above the table. But at the same time, most of their choices are just what they think their character would do in that moment. It's not anything against the DM. An important reminder here is your job isn't to control the story, it's to react to the players. When you stop fighting their choices, DMing gets more fun. So if you're a new DM and you've made a mistake, like one of these, welcome to the club. Leave a comment what mistakes you have made as a new DM. Like I said, I've had a lot of stories. I can do a separate video on some of those later if you guys would like. But every great dungeon master learned by messing up, adapting, and running the next session a little bit better than the last. If you liked this video, you can hit like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what was the hardest part of DMing when you first started. And remember, you don't need to be perfect, you just need to be willing to roll with it. Other than that, guys, I hope everybody is having an amazing day. And until next time, guys, peace.